Hello, my name's Tom Schaeffer. I'm pastor of Faith United Lutheran Church in Toledo, Ohio. And we've been doing a series on the purpose of the church. And today we're talking about that the purpose of the church is to give life, not hoard it. Thanks for joining us for Faith United Online. Our reading today is from the 12th chapter of the Gospel according to St. Luke, beginning at the 15th verse. And Jesus said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grains and my goods. I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.' He said to his disciples, 'Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Or how much more value are you than the birds? Any one of you, by worrying, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your span of life? If you are not able to do so small a thing as that, why do you worry about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying. For it is the nations of the world that strive after all these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, strive for his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So some time ago, many years ago actually, I had a meeting with a dad. It was an interview that was happening, and he was interviewing me for something, and he had his son along with him, and his son's name was Noah, and we were at a Panera. And this was back when Panera used to sit out like a tray of samples. I don't know whether you remember when they would do that. They would cut up various bagels and so forth, and they would put them on the tray, and you could sample what they had out to see if it was something you liked. Well, I was talking with the father, and the father was facing me, and behind me was this tray of samples. And while we were talking, all of a sudden I saw the father look over my shoulder. And when he looked over my shoulder, he got this horrifying look on his face and just yelled out, "Noah!" And at that point, I turned around, and what I saw made me laugh so hard because this child looked like he thought he would never get an opportunity to eat a slice of bagel again in his life. I turned around and his mouth was just stuffed full of this tray of samples. Little Noah is an illustration of how we are taught to live life. We are taught to grab all we can and hoard it. Self-indulgence, it really is the way of our world. Now, it's amazing how that is true regardless of one's prosperity or poverty. Whether you have a lot or a little, we like to hold on to it for ourselves. This is true of all that we possess, our time, our talent, our treasures. The message of Jesus, though, the message of Jesus' life and his teachings turns that idea on its head. That's why, as we talk about the purpose of the church today, we talk about giving our lives away rather than saving it for ourselves. And in doing so, we are turning the church right side up. Again and again, Jesus shows that this is the way of discipleship, the way of those who would follow him. We are to give our lives away rather than save them. We are to share life rather than hoard it. In our text today, Jesus tells us a parable that he says is about greed. Now, I want you to think about this story, and for a moment, I want you to think about if you were hearing this story outside of the context of the Bible. Because if you heard this story outside of that context, it really sounds like the American dream. Run a business, turn a good profit, retire early, and take life easy. But in God's economy, that is not a very successful life. Now, this economy of God that we're talking about here, this whole question that we're dealing with here today, it doesn't even really seem to be a question about salvation, which is what we normally think of when we're talking about, the Gospels. It seems to really be that what God is saying here is that it's just a wasted life. It's a waste of life to live it this way. In a sense, it is really the very definition of gluttony. Gluttony is about more than just overconsumption. At its root, gluttony means to squander. The squandering or wasting of life by trying to keep it all for yourself. Overindulgence, gluttony, isn't a measure of how much you have, it's a measure of how much you keep for yourself. And rich or poor, we can fall into this trap. And Jesus tells us why we succumb to this kind of thinking. We worry. We constantly worry that we don't have enough. And when we do have enough, we worry about a time when we might not have enough. Jesus says that this is a symptom of a faith that is too small. He says to the disciples, "O you of little faith." And here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. If you live your life focused on number one, if you live your life thinking, if I don't take care of me, no one else will, your life is going to be small. But Jesus says that there is another way to live your life, a better way to live your life, a bigger way to live your life. For our lives to have greater meaning than just the pursuit of what we believe we need, what we want. How does that happen? Jesus says, strive for the kingdom. Now, when Matthew records these words in his gospel, he makes it even clearer what Jesus is saying. He says, but strive first for the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Here's what Jesus is saying. You will find your greatest purpose in life when you focus on God's riches rather than on your riches. Jesus goes on to say, focus on depositing treasure in heaven rather than treasure in your pockets, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. In another place in one of the Gospels, Jesus says it this way. He says to his disciples, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will find it. What good will it be for a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? You see, there it is. Jesus turns the world's thinking on its head. If you want to lose your life, make saving it your ultimate concern. If you want to find your best life, then understand your life is more fulfilling if you give it away, if you spend it for a cause that's bigger than yourself. The way to self-fulfillment is found in self-sacrifice. How can this be? Well, Paul describes the church as the body of Christ. So let's work with that metaphor of the body. The physical body needs to do certain things in order to be a living, healthy being. One of those things is respiration. We breathe in, we breathe out. Now, what happens if a creature just keeps breathing in and never breathes out? It dies eventually. You must breathe in and breathe out. That is how God made us. We must live in a constant pattern of taking in and giving out, receiving and giving away. St. Paul talks about a life that looks like this and where this pattern of receiving and giving away comes from. In Ephesians chapter 5, he says, be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. It all starts with the receiving, right? It's about what God has given us, what Christ has done for us. Understanding that everything you have is a gift from God. Life is a gift from God, a gift given by Christ with his own life. And now your job, your purpose is to imitate that life in your own life. And for you to now give away, for you to sacrifice, for you to love others. Let's go back to what Jesus said about depositing treasure in heaven for a moment. What is that treasure that you deposit in heaven? Now, obviously, it's not money, it's not gold or silver, it's not what we would call treasure. The treasure we deposit in heaven are the things God considers precious. Well, what are those things? In Isaiah chapter 43, God says, "You are precious in my sight and honored, and I love you." In John 3:16 it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son." You see, you are the treasure of heaven. People are the treasure of heaven. And the way you deposit treasure in heaven is by loving others as Christ loved us, by being willing to lose your life so that others might find and know the love Christ has for them. To share your life so others might find Christ and find their place in the kingdom. What are you going to do with your life? Hoard it? Save it? And in the process, lose any sense of what life is really about? Or lose it? Give it away. Share it. And in the process, find it in its fullest. Hey, thanks for joining us this week for a message about how to find the best life. And that surprisingly, the way that we find our best life is by giving our life away. I hope that that message will move you to think about how you can live a life of more love, a life that is filled with giving, and in the process, find the best life for yourself. If this is a great message for you, I hope you will share it with someone else that you might also think would benefit from it. Please, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that when the next message comes up from Faith United Online, you'll know about it. Thanks for joining us. God bless. Have a great week.